Hi, I'm Tony Russo, and this is In Case You Missed It from Kates-Boylston for the week ending Friday, June 28th, 2024. We've got a ton of stories that have incomplete accusations in them, so I just want to, it's not quite a disclaimer, it's just these are developing stories and there's more information to be had. We just don't have it yet. And I think it's important before I talk about this first one, which is a suit by the ACLU against the Delaware Funeral Service Board, the Delaware Board of Funeral Services. Everybody names it differently. That's really convenient. They are saying that the rules for being a funeral director in Delaware preclude imams who are against embalming. And as you know, if you're in the funeral industry, Jewish people and Muslim people do not embalm their dead. This imam says he's been targeted by the state because he just wants to take the bodies and get the death certificate. And he said that he's been charged fees up to $1,000 for getting access to these death certificates, and that the state of Delaware says you can only get a death certificate from a funeral director, and that the funeral director can charge a fee for that. This could be 100% true, but there are also Jewish people in Delaware, and there are also a significant, not insignificant, Muslim contingent. So it's difficult to believe that these two religions aren't able to get death certificates except by paying $1,000 per to a funeral director. I left a message with the Delaware Funeral Directors Association. Their executive director is away until next week. I did speak with a member of the board off the record, just because they're preparing an official statement, and he told me that there were pieces missing from the article that reported on it. So again, look for a report on this in hopefully the July 11th edition of Funeral Service Insider, and we'll get this all sorted out before too long. The difficulty, I guess, from the public's perspective is this idea of funeral directors as gatekeepers. And I know that is a perception that people are trying to shake, and it might be best to say, rather than gatekeepers, more like guides, more like directors to help people get to where they want to be. So I'm suspicious I'm not suspicious of the claim, but I'm suspicious that it might be more of a personality clash between 2 or 3 people involved rather than an endemic problem in the state of Delaware generally. I know that lots of states have the ability to get your own death certificate. You can apply to the state for one. So again, we'll have to see how this shakes out, but stay tuned and we'll have more news on that as I said, as it develops. So there is a new decomposition discovery that has been announced. Scientists from Colorado State University have published a paper showing that there are factors in decomposition that have nothing to do with the environment, or rather with time and temperature and all of the things that we tend to associate with decomposition, that no matter where a body is placed, it will decompose at a similar rate depending upon the access that these microbes have to it. The microbes are attached. This is not certainly not a secret that microbes are attached to flies. And what makes this a special study is that, and I'm going to read it for you, over several years, cadavers were placed in cages and exposed to elements from across all 4 seasons. After 21 days, Metcalf, who was the Dr. Jessica Metcalf, who led the study, and her team collected skin and oil samples from each cadaver. These samples underwent various tests, both at the molecular and at the genetic levels, and the same 20 microbes were present across all 36 bodies. So it's not to say that, cold bodies decompose faster than warm bodies. Like in the Arctic, you stay frozen, but the agent is the same across all of the decomposition cases, which I just thought was fascinating. I know that there are people out there who are really who really have an understanding and a fascination with the methods of decomposition. And there is a link in the show notes. I have to, encourage you to read the story because it's got science words in it that are beyond me, and I'm not going to try them here. But the prospect of having a better understanding of decomposition can only help funeral directors. So if it's something that you need to understand, this is an opportunity to understand a little bit more of it. Washington State has changed the rules a little bit about how long a funeral home must hold indigent remains before they can be cremated. This is an issue that keeps coming up from state to state. There's no real rhyme or reason, as far as I can tell, for the different amounts of time. But the short version is, in Washington, if a funeral director was asked, allowed, drew the short straw, and was supposed to pick up an indigent body, they had to leave that body for 90 days in the refrigeration before they could cremate it. And, that if you are a small rural funeral home is a very long time. And it became a problem enough so that they reached out to the state and they said, hey, let's make it 30 days. And the state said, no, how about 45? So the new law that went into effect on June 1st says that they have to keep the indigent remains for 45 days before they can, cremate them and then continue to store them until they're picked up. The difficulty is that, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know if you've ever dealt with indigents, is that the county or the state or the town, whoever is the overseeing authority, has a limit on what they'll pay for it. And they will pay whatever they pay for the cremated remains. But the families are just as afraid to come and, give consent to have the body cremated as they are to come and pick up the cremated remains, because they don't have the means to pay for it. And if they're, I guess, afraid that if they show up, they'll be charged for it, even though the state has already said that this is an indigent case, and they will pick up the tab. Then the number of people who need education on this is probably quite small. I know there has to be a better way than just waiting for someone who we all know isn't coming. There are very rare cases, and again, as a funeral director, you will be aware of them, where 90 days later, somebody shows up and says, hey, I heard, my Uncle Phil was living on Skid Row out here and I can't find him. So it's, I guess, a step in the right direction. I think that in states like this, we did one earlier last year, or early this year, or late last year, I think, on Idaho. There was another one in Oregon. It happens all over the country where there's no way for people to be told, for people to be confident that we understand that you can't afford to. Utah was another one. We understand that you can't afford to pay for this cremation. The cremation was already paid for by the state, but please pick up these cremated remains and scatter them, or do what you would like to do with them within your means. So I guess it's kind of a win a little bit. 45 days still seems like a very long time. There are states where it's 10 days to hold an indigent body. And I think that someplace between 10 and 30, is probably right. The percentage of time that everyone involved knows that, hey, this is old Joe. No one's come to look for old Joe in the last 45 years. They're not coming in the next 45 days. And I think common sense would be better off prevailing. But in the meantime, this is the way that these things are taken care of. And it's going to stay that way until 45 days is too long and needs review again. Tesla is suing Matthews for $1 billion over some patent infringements. They say that Matthews took or stole or what would be a word, repurposed some IP from Tesla when they were working together on battery issues. As you may or may not know, Matthews Aurora is a company with its hands in multiple pies, and one of those pies is battery technology. It's one that they're very excited about. And one of the reasons that I think this is salient for funeral directors and for funeral service generally is at the end of their last call, at the end of their last earnings call, they had a excitable and angry, a disappointed investor point blank tell them that they would prefer that Matthews focused more on its funeral business and less on some of the other manufacturing and battery businesses. This particular investor felt like Matthews was really good at the one thing, and that the other operations were holding back both potential profits in funeral service in the funeral business, and also returns from investors. Skeptical about that, but that is what was reported by me in FSI because it's what happened. Interesting on the heels of the Park Lawn deal, which we mentioned last week, and if you're a subscriber, we have a pretty detailed backstory on the Park Lawn deal in this week's issue. As far as Matthews and Tesla, Matthews has categorically and emphatically denied the charges. They say that Tesla is just trying to bully them out of their IP. That wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, unfortunately, for better or for worse, Tesla is very associated with its CEO, and the CEO is sometimes not operating under the same rules for describing reality that the rest of us are. We'll follow this as it goes along. With any luck, it will be dismissed. It would be a tragedy to see Matthews have to pay Tesla $1 billion over a widget that probably isn't really very important to anyone. But Tesla, as Tesla's facing its own struggles. Let's not pretend that they're not. So it's an interesting time for as Matthews said, a bullying, petty kind of petty attack. Next week, just as a heads up, there will be no FSI. We are taking off for the holiday. Have a happy 4th of July. Enjoy the rest of your summer. If you're listening to this, we have our FSI, the podcast, all queued up for next week. And that will run on Monday, but there will be no FSI. There will be no In Case You Missed It podcast or video for July 5th. So we will see you on July 12th. Enjoy your holiday weekend.